This past summer, the internet was abuzz with talk of the ballerina farm. Now, I was out of the country at the time. Okay, I was in Canada, but it sounds much fancier to say out of the country. So I missed most of this. I would just, every time I would occasionally look at social media, I would happen to see ballerina farm, and I just assumed the obvious. There was a new Dance Mom style show where people would ship their ballet curious children to a rural farm where the children would work grueling hours hauling feed around while competing in challenges like who can jeter over the biggest cow. Sadly, or happily perhaps, that was not actually the case. I learned, much too late to join the discourse, that the ballerina farm is an actual working farm run by a trad wife social media influencer who had been profiled in the Sunday Times by writer Megan Agnew. If you're not aware, trad wife is short for traditional wife, and it's become a popular label for women on TikTok and Instagram who present themselves as the ideal woman for usually a made-up manly man from the 1950s, obsessed with making and raising babies, cooking, being really into God, taking care of their man's every need and desire, being white, not working outside the home, and definitely not having any opinions on anything other than that stuff. Last year, Amanda Marcotte wrote a very good overview of this trend, particularly how the entire thing is a toxic fantasy that manipulates the audience into believing that these women are living humble lives of focusing on family over fame and fortune, even as they voice strong opinions and rake in the dough. They aren't actually traditional wives, they are performers. Agnew's Sunday Times piece referred to Hannah Nealman as the queen of the trad wives, despite Nealman herself saying she doesn't apply that label. But she does have 10 million followers on Instagram, where she posts photos and videos showing her life raising 8 children on a farm in Utah, so named Ballerina Farm because she trained as a ballerina at Juilliard and continued to dance and compete in beauty pageants even after she started popping out babies. Whether she likes the label or not, she does seem to be a prime example of a trad wife influencer. I know the Times piece is old news, so I shouldn't spend too much time talking about it, but I do want to say it left me actually kind of liking Nealman and also feeling really bad for her. Obviously, this is a piece written from a very particular standpoint that I sympathized with, and Nealman has responded to rebut it a bit, but I'll just give you the overview. Nealman is a Mormon from Utah who, as a child, wanted to become a ballerina, so she went to Juilliard in New York City. When she was back home in Utah, during a break, she met Daniel Nealman, also a Mormon and the son of the founder of the airline JetBlue. He immediately wanted to marry her, but she wouldn't even date him for 6 months. One day, she mentioned she was flying back to New York, and he called his dad and booked the seat next to her, pretending that it was all just a funny coincidence. In the airline industry, insiders refer to this as a big red flag. After the flight, she agreed to date him for at least a year before getting married so that, she could finish school. This is a normal thing to tell someone when you are from a culture that prioritizes getting married and having children as soon as humanly possible. Daniel said no. So instead, they dated for 1 month before they got engaged and then got married 2 months after that. In the wedding industry, insiders refer to this as another big fucking red flag. 3 months after the wedding, she was pregnant. In obstetrics, you know what? I'm going to stop with that joke. You get the idea. She did still manage to finish school while pregnant, but instead of going on to become a professional dancer, she and her husband had several more kids and then moved back to Utah, where his dream was to own a farm. She describes this time as being very hard and involving a lot of sacrifice, but Agnew points out that all of the sacrifice seems to have come from Hannah. Daniel wanted to live in the great western wild, so they did. He wanted to farm, so they do. He likes date nights once a week, so they go. They have a babysitter on those evenings. He didn't want nannies in the house, so there aren't any. The only space earmarked to be Nealman's own, a small barn she wanted to convert into a ballet studio, ended up becoming the kids' schoolroom. Oh, good. They're homeschooled. Agnew points out that Daniel appears to be a hands-on father, but also reports that Daniel says Hannah sometimes gets so ill from exhaustion that she can't get out of bed for a week, which is not good, not normal, and also not ever shown in their social media posts as best as I could tell. As I mentioned, Hannah responded to the piece in an Instagram by calling the article an attack on her family and her lifestyle, insisting that she really loves their life and can't wait to have more babies. Anyway, I was thinking of this profile recently because I happened to stumble upon a recent paper published in the Journal of Rural Mental Health. What, you don't subscribe to the Journal of Rural Mental Health? I guess you didn't grow up in a forest surrounded by friends, family, and neighbors dealing with undiagnosed anxiety, depression, and ADHD by drinking too much and obsessively collecting guns and commemorative NASCAR-themed dinner plates? It's a fascinating place and only 45 minutes from the shore. Anyway, researchers at University of Georgia School of Social Work have just published A Great Life If You Can Stand It, which is a direct quote from one of the more than 24 women they surveyed across 6 focus groups about their experience being married to farmers in rural Georgia. What they found really mirrors what Agnew wrote about Nealman's experience. The study itself is behind a paywall, but there are many details in the University of Georgia's press release on it. Lead author Anna Chiat says that these women tend to take care of everything that isn't farm work, like housework, yard work, childcare, to the point that one participant even referred to herself as a single parent. But it doesn't stop with just keeping the house. More than half of the women reported being the business's bookkeepers, with their husbands never even glancing at what money is coming in or going out unless the wife brings it to their attention. But it doesn't stop with just keeping the house, kids, and books. Many of the women also worked the farm, but downplayed their own contributions as only managing the hay or whatnot. But it doesn't stop with only taking care of the house, kids, books, and various farming duties. Because farming is uncertain and one bad frost can spell disaster for the season's crops, 2/3 of the women in the study also work full-time outside the home. This provides more financial stability and healthcare coverage for the families, but it also increases the mental load the women carry. No shit. So a significant number of these women are keeping a full-time job while being 100% responsible for raising the kids, while cleaning the house, cooking all the meals, mowing the lawn, trimming the trees, hauling around hay, balancing the books, for an entire business and the household itself. And there's one more thing. Chiat reports that in addition to all of that, these women confess they're also in charge of reducing their husband's stress and managing their husband's emotions. The women described feeling like they had to be the bright spot in everyone's day, saying it was up to them to manage their husband's emotions when things got rough and the farmers got grumpy. Anytime they're under stress, boy, you're going to get the brunt of it, said one participant. Obviously, this is just one in-depth survey of a limited sample size, but I do think it highlights how far women still have to go. And I mean all women. You could argue that rural farming life is innately less egalitarian than the life of, say, a family living in a condo in downtown Atlanta. But I'd argue that the two are more similar than we think. I suspect that there are many families out there from a variety of backgrounds and social and economic statuses in which women are taking on far more work than anyone realizes, including the women themselves. Because as a society, we do continue to devalue work like child rearing and emotional labor and doing all the behind the scenes things that keep our lives going. And I think that we as a society do still assume that if someone is going to make a sacrifice in a heterosexual partnership, it's going to be the woman. And that's why I don't hate Hannah Nealman. In a way, she's a great example of someone who bridges that supposed gap between rural farmers' wives and urban elites. She is a beautiful and talented ballerina who married a multimillionaire who could give her whatever she wants. But her wants were immediately replaced by his wants. His want to date, to get married, to have children immediately, to live and work on a farm. And just like the rural women in that survey, she's decided that that's all worth it. She finds it rewarding. She's proud of her hard work and her husband's hard work. She doesn't want our pity. So yeah, fair enough. There's still a lot to be critical of when it comes to Nealman and whether she likes it or not, her fellow trad wife influencers for selling a fantasy. No, random woman working long hours in a soulless corporate job, you will most likely not find joy and happiness by buying a farm because working on a farm is actually really hard. And if your dad didn't own an airline at some point, you can't afford it. And no, guys who can't get a match on Tinder, who think that women are too liberated these days, you won't find a hot, submissive blonde woman who just wants to cook you dinner and have your babies because you don't own an airline or have a dad who owns an airline. This is a fantasy, and it can be a dangerous fantasy if taken too far, like, for instance, in a country where men are becoming more emboldened to say things like, your body, my choice to women. But I still can't hate Hannah because at the end of the day, she's a woman who was born into a misogynistic religious cult and felt her best option was to give up her dreams. But despite that, she still managed to have some control over her life, to become successful and to do it all on a stage, just like she wanted. And frankly, I have to respect that. I just hope that she can learn to respect herself too. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.